Right, it's a day later. It doesn't need to be a day later, but it is a day later. So, we're now going to do the filling for your galette. And what you need for that is leeks and mushrooms. So the recipe calls for 3 cups of leeks. How you get one of these into a cup is beyond me. And 1.25 pounds of shiitake mushrooms. We don't have shiitake mushrooms, and I think we're going to be under on the leeks. So we've actually got a bigger quantity of baby Bella mushrooms, and it's going to be just as fabulous. So those are the main ingredients for this. There's a bunch of other stuff, which I tell you as we go along. We're going to slice the leeks, and you don't use the really dark bits, but you can go quite a long way up the stalk. Now, the thing with leeks is the way they grow, they get grit in the all up inside the plant. It's like it grows rings, and for whatever reason you pile dirt on them when you are growing them. That's to keep them white, actually, and all that dirt gets trapped in there, so you have to wash them thoroughly. And the way I do it is I cut them lengthwise, then cut it into strips, so you've got little half circles, and then you just put it through several rinses of water. So I'll do one. No point showing me both of you. I'll do one, and then I'll do the other, and I'll come back to you. So first of all, with a very sharp knife, I slice along the length of the leek. Normally you can kind of discard the outside legs. The outside one is quite tough. For the purposes of this one, because we don't have very much, I'm going to use just the first bit. You can see as it starts to get a little further up, it's pretty manky. So just cut it into 1/4 inch wide strips. Now this one here, I don't want that bit, it doesn't look good. So I just take off the bits as I go along. Really what we want is the white and the light green bits. Now both of these are starting to get a bit manky, so I'll remove a couple of pieces and I'm back to light green bits, so I can keep going. And I can see that the dirt, I'm now at the end of the light green. Well, there's some. We can get a little bit more out of these. It's just that when it's dark green, it's rather tough. So I'm just going to put those in water. We're going to be very short on leeks. This is going to be a mushroom and leek galette. Maybe we can find something else green to put in there. Anyway, so I'm going to cut the other one up and then I'll get back to you. Right, so we're back. There are our leeks. Not very many leeks, but we should be okay. So I'm just heating up some oil in a pan on our trusty induction stove, which is unbelievable. Right, so I've done 3 washes of the leeks, so that should have got all the grit and dirt out of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to sweat the leeks. No sweat. So I'm just going to put them in the pan with the hot oil, get them coated in the oil, and then cover them, cook them under a low heat until they are just starting to go soft but not mushy. And I prepared this earlier, just like Blue Peter. The recipe says for like a teaspoon of fresh thyme, finely chopped. This is more than a teaspoon. I like thyme. The great thing about these induction stoves is they heat the pan, not the cooktop, so they don't actually heat up the kitchen. Really, really good. Every home should have one. So we're putting the leeks in. And you can tell that oil was about the right temperature based on the nice sizzling noise it's making. Let me get this just to make sure everything is nicely coated in oil. And then we'll get the thyme. So nice fresh thyme out of the garden. It's not really out of the garden. It could have been out of the garden, but nobody will know. So we just stir that up. Make sure the thyme is well distributed. And put a loose fitting top on, which that is, and every so often I'll go back and give it a stir. In the meantime, you can work on the mushrooms. What we're going to do is slice the mushrooms. I'm going to cook them in a bowl in the microwave, really just to soften them up, get the moisture out of them. You don't want too much moisture in your vegetables and your mushrooms, because that will make your pastry soft. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get all the moisture out of it before we mix it all together. And when we do mix it together, it's going to be with a mixture, salt and pepper to season it, crème fraîche, and Dijon mustard. And you mix it all together and it makes a very yummy mixture. I'm not going to bore you with me chopping up a bunch of mushrooms, so I'll do some of it and then we'll jump to the end. So basically, all I'm going to do is just take off the hard tips of the mushroom stems. I mean, some people take off the whole stem, but I think that's one of the best bits of the mushroom. So let's just take the hard crunchy bit off the end, leave the rest of the stem, and then we'll slice these babies up. So all I do, just take that much off and then just slice them thinly. That's it. That's all we're going to do. Now we have I think the correct quantity for this is a shitload. So I'm going to keep doing this for a bit and I'll switch you back on later. Right, I'm just about to finish up the mushrooms. Just a word about knives, first of all. When you're chopping something like this, or when you're chopping anything, that is not a knife. That's a knife. Bigger the better. This is a paring knife, which you don't use for chopping, you use it for gouging out things and like little fine things. This is for chopping. And if possible, you should have one with a curved blade, because then you can chop things like that. Anyway, enough of that. I suppose I should say, now that's a knife. Just chop these last two, and I'm not Gordon fucking Ramsay here. It doesn't matter. We're not doing it to be pretty, they just need to be chopped up. So you don't need to take a lot of attention making sure they're all the same size, right? Just chop them up as quickly as you can and make sure you count your fingers when you're finished. Now, that looks like a lot of mushrooms, doesn't it? Well, it is, but it's only half, because there's the other half, right? So I think we've got a lot of mushrooms here. So I'm going to put these all in that bowl. And then here comes the magic bit. We are going to cover this bowl with a sheet of cling film, or plastic food wrap if you prefer. Right, so get your plastic food wrap Make sure it covers the bowl so it's nice and secure. This thing is going to blow up like a beach ball. We're going to put it in the microwave for 5 minutes. That will be enough to cook all the mushrooms and get the liquid out. So there you are. While that's cooking there, we check these. These are done. I've switched it off. Right, so now we just wait for the mushrooms, and while we're waiting for the mushrooms, I'll make a mixture of Dijon and crème fraîche. And crème fraîche is French stuff. I think it's a bit like clotted cream, isn't it? It's like a thicker sour cream. It's thicker sour cream. Anyway, this French stuff is actually really good. So here's the crème fraîche. It says French cultured cream, cultured grade and pasteurized cream. We've had this sitting around in the fridge for a while, but it tends to keep for a long time. As you can see, it's very solid. There's a little bit of liquid in there. So I need 2 tablespoons of crème fraîche and 1 of Dijon mustard. And the quantities, like these quantities, they're all approximate. Like for the pastry, whenever you're making pastry or bread, quantities are really, really important. When you're doing anything else, just go with it. It's some, well, we're not going to get much Dijon out of that, are we? It's fucking empty. As Gordon would say. Before we continue with the Dijon, we have a somewhat dead dog. I think she's worn out with all the excitement of Christmas. Oh, now you move. She was looking decidedly dead. Oh, now she's moved. You want to say, look, you're supposed to be helping me. Oh, that's it. Have a good stretch. Oh, yes. So today is the 1-year anniversary of Natasha adopting us. And my, how she's changed. This was a little dog who was frightened of her own shadow when we got her. I have rescued another bottle of Dijon from the fridge. This one is slightly better. I can probably get a tablespoon out of this one, but I wouldn't bank on it. It's going everywhere. Oh, you missed that. I had a bit of premature ejaculation with that. It's gone all over the side of the bowl, on the countertop, which fortunately I cleaned with the dough yesterday. That wasn't quite. There's still plenty in this one. So that one. So we'll go for the new one and put in some more. And my mushrooms have just finished. So the timing is, wouldn't say it's exactly perfect, but it's about right. So I can edit this bit out. Oh, come on, for God's sake. Mother. No? I cannot. There we are, I've got it. Why do they make these things so difficult to open? I suppose it's so small children and animals can't get into it. Right, so there we are. So, we'll just mix these together. So that's my mixture of crème fraîche And it's the mixture of creme, fraiche and dijon. And see, this one says, no, you probably can't read it, and oh, it wasn't sealed. It's always the best bit when it blows up like a balloon. This is generally very, very hot. And there's a fair amount of steam coming off these. I'm not sure that, yeah, those are cooked. So there is normally quite a lot of liquid that comes out of the mushrooms. So that we have to pour off. So you can see that this is reduced in size to about half of what it was, and golly jeepers, it's hot. So we'll get the trusty colander. Alright, so I don't know if you can see all that liquid coming off. See, we get rid of that
3 cups of flour,
because otherwise it would make for very soggy. Oh, my tripod just died. There we go. Right, I've fixed my tripod. So I'm not sure if you could see there, but a lot of liquid came out of these mushrooms, and that's a bad thing when you're making anything with pastry. So what you can also do, I don't actually say this in the recipe, but you can actually just squeeze them and you'll get a little bit more of the liquid out. Right, so that's that done. We will return them to the bowl. Yummy. And this is where we put everything together, and that's the bulk of the work for this, so it really isn't that difficult. Right, bowl of mushrooms. Beautifully coloured leeks and thyme. These go together. My assistant dog is staring at me because she wants to try some of this. She wants to try everything. I think she was a chef's dog in another life. Or maybe she was a chef in another life. Oh, now I've thrown it on the floor. Okay. Okay. This dog is like Beetlejuice. You have to tell her 3 times. Okay. Right, well done. So, the dog has picked everything up. We're mixing together the leeks and the mushrooms, and we add our crème fraîche and dijon mix. Taste that mixture, tastes so good. So now we just mix all this together, and then there's lots of mushrooms, and then we season to taste. So instead of being a leek and mushroom galette, this is a mushroom and leek galette.
nothing wrong with that.
Same ingredients, different emphasis. I'm going to get a teaspoon to get the rest of this out. I'm not going to get a teaspoon, I'll edit that out. I'm going to get one of these to get the rest of the... This is a rubber spatula.
Very useful rubber spatula.
And it is indeed a very useful rubber spatula. Now the dog here is looking hopeful. The dog is going to be disappointed. There you go, to my human assistant. Here we have salt. And you can add plenty of salt to this, but as I said, you season to taste. In other words, you do it for a bit, you taste it, and then you adjust. So normally you would take a small teaspoon and taste it. I am going to use the rubber spatula. Needs just a little bit more. Just needs a little bit more salt and pepper. I just want you to see that the assistant seems to be somewhat satisfied with what we have done. Are you happy with what we've done, Natasha? Yes. So I'll set this aside, let it cool down a little bit, and then we will come back to assembling the galette. At this point, it seems like I made a mistake with my camera, so I'm just saying I've got a glass of wine, I'm watching Bad Santa, I've got the dough, which I took out of the fridge about 40 minutes earlier to warm up, and I'm going to put parchment paper on the baking tray, and then I'm going to roll out the dough approximately to the size of the baking tray. Now, rolling it out really isn't that scientific. Just keep rolling it. If you find bits that break off, then you can just move other pieces and stick them on. So we keep rolling out till it's about 1/8 of an inch thick. You can see I'm moving pieces around. Then we're going to move this over to the parchment lined baking tray. I'm going to take a knife, just trim it off all around. And at this point, I get a phone call, which really doesn't slow me down very much. So now we're going to put the filling in. I start to put the filling in, and then I forget that we're actually supposed to put oil on the pastry first to protect it from the liquid. We put half of the mushroom and leek mixture, then half of the cheese. And then on top of that, we put the remainder of the mushroom and leek mixture and the remainder of the cheese, and I'm pouring off. There's still some liquid there. So I really think I didn't cook the mushrooms enough. You'll see that there's a 2-inch perimeter left on the pastry. So after spraying some oil on, dabbing up a little bit more of the liquid, we fold up the edge and then pinch it in every 2 inches. We'll then beat an egg, brush that onto the pastry so it's nice and golden once it's cooked in the oven. You can go all around here. You probably won't use all the egg. Sprinkle it with salt. Then you're ready to put it in the oven, 350 degrees for, I think it's about 40 minutes. And when it comes out, it's absolutely gorgeous. You'll see the crust is nice and brown, gives you the chance to finish watching the movie, have a glass of wine, and then enjoy.